Alongside the legends, Mel Kiper and Field Yates. I am Greeny. We are live with you twice every week, Monday and Thursday afternoons, live on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts, and on ESPN2 every Monday. And before we dive into it, Young Fielding, as Mel calls you, what was it you just said to us moments ago as we were setting up our microphones during the hectic week that is NFL free agency? Where is it that you find your solace?
I find my solace in the dulcet tones of Mel Kiper Jr., Greeny. As we are sitting here right now, we are just hours away from the beginning of the legal negotiating period during free agency. Meanwhile, as of right this moment, Twitter is down, Greeny. Everybody's primary source for news gathering is not even available to us. So how am I staying calm during the storm? I'm hanging out with my guy, Mel Kiper Jr., and of course you, Greeny, as well, because Mel finds a way to make everything feel like it's going to be all right.
Mel, how do you take that?
I think Field's got to figure his life thing out better than that, boy. I think you got some work to be done, maybe some therapy or something.
I've already got plenty of that, don't worry.
Draft therapy or something. I don't know what it would be, but we got all kind of action this week. And I think about where we are right now in terms of these teams and quarterbacks. It's interesting. You're going in to April, not even knowing who your starting quarterback's going to be. And we talk about rookies you may draft, and some of them become starters, and some of them become great right away, some don't. But to not have anybody in place with some of these teams is pretty amazing. And, of course, Geno Smith, and I agree, we talked about Geno Smith, and we talked about familiarity, belief, loyalty, whatever you want. And that rang true again with Pete Carroll. Comes to the Raiders, and who does he go right after? His old quarterback. So it is pretty amazing when you say, if you're not drafted by that GM or not drafted by that head coach, good luck, right? You better be really, really good, because if you're not, they're not going to like you, because that is a big, big thing with quarterbacks and head coaches, quarterbacks and GMs.
So Mel took us right there. Let me very quickly, from a housekeeping perspective, mention that you can scan the QR code that is on your screen. You can access the entire First Draft YouTube playlist. We are going to dive into Mel and Field's steals of the draft as this podcast today continues. But Mel took us right there. We wanted to talk about some of these free agent moves / trades and how they will impact the upcoming draft. And that was the big one on Friday, the one that as of this moment we know is happening. Geno Smith to the Raiders for a third-round pick this year. So it is Carroll and Geno together again. Now, Field, we look at everything from the perspective of the draft on this show. Yeah. I had it suggested on Get Up this morning that despite this move, the Raiders should absolutely still be in the market to take a quarterback at 6. If they feel good, let's live in a world realistically where maybe Shedeur Sanders falls down there. Yeah. Field, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, Greeny, I would actually bypass a quarterback at pick number 6 now with having Geno Smith on my roster. And by the way, I fully expect Geno Smith in the Raiders to find middle ground on an extension beyond this year, because he currently has just 1 year left on his deal. Now, Geno Smith may be 35 years old, Greeny, but if there is ever such a thing as a quarterback who is 35 with minimal tread on his tires relative to those 35-year-old quarterbacks, Geno Smith would be it, right? He spent about 8 seasons as basically a backup, collecting dust for parts of that as Russell Wilson's backup, because Russ never missed time in Seattle. A reminder, this is almost a weekly reminder at this point, Pete Carroll will be the oldest head coach in the history of the NFL when he is on the sidelines for week 1 for the Seahawks this upcoming fall. I believe this team is trying to win sooner rather than later in an AFC West that some would say maybe the better plan would be to try to rebuild because of how talented the other 3 teams are with a great head coach and quarterback duo. I think now that Las Vegas is saying, we believe we can make a push sooner rather than later. We recently re-upped Max Crosby. We now have Geno Smith under center. It wouldn't surprise me if Las Vegas is thinking, whatever gives us the best chance to win in 2025 is our primary focus at pick number 6. That is why, for the next 6+ weeks, we'll be talking a lot about the idea of Ashton Jeanty as the 6th overall selection. Pete Carroll loves to run the football no matter who he has under center.
Mel?
Yeah, guys, I had Jeanty going to the Raiders in mock 2.0. Everybody laughed at me. It was the big joke of the century, taking a running back at 6. And I'm not talking about you, Phil. I'm talking about a lot of different people I spoke to. So are you crazy? They're not taking a running back at 6. Well, Pete Carroll likes to run the football. That's not what we brought Marshawn Lynch. They drafted Rashad Penny. But I was under the impression then that it was going to be Sam Darnold to Seattle. Excuse me, to the Raiders, not Seattle making a move and doing the things they did with Geno Smith moving on. I thought it would be the Raiders getting Sam Darnold. Yeah. Now we're talking about Sam Darnold to maybe Seattle. We thought that would be a possibility, whatever. Okay, but the bottom line is the Raiders at 6 can't be guaranteed in their minds or think we're definitely getting Shedeur Sanders at 6. Last year we thought it was going to be Michael Penix Jr. He didn't last that long, and they lost out on their quarterback. So here's Pete Carroll getting a guarantee. 35 is kind of, he said 35 in October, Geno will be field. 35 is a new 30. So now all of a sudden you got a quarterback, as you said, can probably play another at a high level, they think, or a solid level. They couldn't beat the division last year. So, they're going to win a couple of games against the division. You still have the fourth, even with Geno, you got the 4th best quarterback in the division. So you've kind of, gotten it up a little bit. You're closer, right? You've kind of made progress in that area, but you're not ahead of the other 3 quarterbacks. You never will be. Obviously, Mahomes is great. We know what Herbert can be, and we know what Nix has already shown. So at the end of the day, all these quarterbacks are all elite. One phenomenal and the other 2 right there. So for me, it's about now figuring out at 6, if Shedeur is there, and you already went on record field saying you would not take Shedeur Sanders. Myself, knowing if Pete Carroll's Geno Smith all the way, I'm a Shedeur guy. Yeah. I would look sure, but this is Pete Carroll saying, Geno, you're our guy for now and moving forward at age 35 in October, which I said he could play till he's 40. Right. So I don't know what they're going to do if Shedeur is there, and there's no guarantee he will be. Right. Yeah, that's going to be really interesting because Ginty gives them that running dynamic. Now, they didn't get Darnold. They got Geno. Yeah. So they still have their quarterback. You got Bowers last year when you didn't get the quarterback. So for me, I got to believe. I kind of with you, Field. Even though I'm a Shedeur guy, I would find a feel right now they would go away from Shedeur despite the Brady connection and take maybe the running back to help out the quarterback.
Yeah, last thing I'll say on this screen, at least from my perspective on the pick 6 and taking Ginty versus Shedeur Sanders is this. If, and we don't know, again, free agency hasn't even begun, but let's operate in a world where Tennessee does not have a veteran quarterback that we feel great about for the long term. And Cleveland, same situation. And the New York Giants, same situation. If all 3 of those teams, the most they do is add a player who gives them like maybe 1 or 2 years maximum of quarterback security, if they all do that and they also bypass, or I guess in this case, 2 out of those 3 bypass Shedeur Sanders, that to me would be kind of telling about how the league views him as a prospect relative to how he has been discussed throughout the past few months. So if I'm the Raiders, I think the Geno trade signaled we are trying to win sooner rather than later. Same with the Max Crosby trade because remember, the Max Crosby re-signing because remember, if they didn't give him that deal, they could have certainly found a partner to take on Max Crosby and give them plenty of draft capital in return. I just think this is the team that between Tom Brady, John Spike, their new GM, and Pete Carroll is thinking about winning sooner rather than later, even if that division might feel like the last place where quick fixes are actually going to work.
So, Mel,
I say one thing, Grady, before we go.
Yeah.
This league is clueless with quarterbacks. It's been proven out. I did that study back to 1970, and it continues on. This league doesn't know a quarterback that they fell over. I mean, they have no clue. They grab bag it. They're here. They're there. They're everywhere. There's no feeling of I can develop or I can get this guy to improve. Yes, we have some things last year we needed to work on. I can bring him back this year. They really don't know. And I think the fact that if you draft a quarterback like they stuck with Josh Allen early on because Brandon Beane and McDermott were there from the beginning, and I was Josh Allen all the way, but people were still hating on Allen. Well, those at GM and head coach were firm. They were solid as a rock behind Josh. Yeah. Other teams aren't. There's none of that belief that we can develop and improve a guy and have the continuity necessary to allow that to happen. So it just speaks volumes to how, like I say, clueless the NFL is to this day about evaluating quarterbacks.
It's hard to do.
Mel, that is the point I wanted to make here, which is I've had it, and listen, one of the disadvantages we have is that as we're having this conversation, we live in one reality. By the time a lot of people are hearing it, another reality may exist. So, Mel, in a world in which Geno Smith is the quarterback of the Raiders and the Jets get Justin Fields, which is where you had mocked Shedeur Sanders to go. Yeah. Could we be living in a world where Shedeur Sanders really slides in this first round?
I mean, you possibly could. It's happened before. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was viewed as maybe going number 1 3 weeks before that draft. They slid well into the 20s, that year. So these things always have had a chance to happen, and they have happened, okay? They've happened, like I say, go back to Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example of that. I mean, we were mocking him. Is it going to be Alex Smith or Aaron Rodgers going number 1? Alex Smith goes number 1 and he falls way, way down. So if teams feel a better option is a quarterback that's already been in the league, and we have Cam Ward becoming the first quarterback off the board to say Cleveland at 2, then if these other teams have other ways of going about the quarterback position, then fine. If they want to go, last year, Kirk Cousins was in Atlanta, and Michael Penix Jr. became a Falcon. Right. So everybody said there's no way Atlanta's going to go with Kirk Cousins and then draft Michael Penix Jr., but they did. So do these teams feel strong enough about some of these other quarterbacks to bypass a Shedeur Sanders, who I love, but I get why he's not automatic. Shedeur isn't 6'4". Okay, he doesn't have the arm. He doesn't have the mobility some of these other quarterbacks have in terms of 40 times in running skills. I get all that. But the bottom line is he's a hell of a quarterback. So who can be a franchise quarterback in this league. But I understand why people are a little lukewarm on him. I get it. Yeah. So it's going to be really fascinating to see where Shedeur Sanders ends up coming off the board.
Yeah, final word for me, Greeny, I guess, is that if there are, in my estimation, 6 teams in the first 9 picks that you can make a case need a quarterback, whether it's for 2025 or at least for the foreseeable future, right? Maybe the Browns or the Giants sign a free agent, like an Aaron Rodgers, who's going to end up somewhere, right? Or Justin Fields goes to the Jets, as an example. If there are 6 teams in the first 9 that need a quarterback and Shedeur Sanders does not go in the first 9 picks, anything is possible beyond that, right? We just don't know how far the slide could continue if he does not make his way in the first 9.
All right, let me leave it there. Obviously, as this week goes on, even as this day goes on, a lot of these answers may come into view. We'll take a short break on that. We have the steals of the draft coming up as we continue. This is the First Draft podcast with Mel and Field, and we're back in just a moment. For more draft coverage, tune into First Draft. Catch Mel Kiper Jr., Field Yates, and me Monday afternoons and Thursdays at noon on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel.